Hey everyone, welcome to the Open Table podcast. My name is Reverend Brandan Robertson, and I'm a progressive Christian pastor, author, and theologian. Each week, I'll be uploading my reflections on the Bible from a progressive, inclusive Christian perspective, in hopes that it will equip and inspire you on your own journey of faith. And if you'd like to go deeper, I want to invite you over to join my Patreon community. Patreon is a community of progressive, inclusive Christians from all around the world, and we get together each week on Zoom calls and on discussion boards and get to really build a community around this journey towards reconstructing our faith. So if you'd like to go deeper into any of the concepts you're hearing in these sermons, come on over to my Patreon and join us. The link is in the show notes. With all of that said, I'm so glad you're here today. Let's listen in to today's sermon. So a thing about me is that I am a planner. If you were to look at my calendar, you'd see that up to a year in advance, I have time blocked for everything. From the smallest appointments for dinner with a friend to major trips or medical appointments or written out goals. Now, whether or not I actually do everything that's on the calendar that's planned, that's another matter. But I'm also the type that loves a goal or a resolution. I love envisioning the future, where I hope to be and what I hope to do. And I know that I'm not unique in this. We live in a culture of goal setting, vision boards, time blocking, and planning. We live in the late stages of capitalism where productivity is one of the highest measures of our value as people. And we always try to find time to do more, achieve more, earn more, and push more towards our idealistic goals. None of this is inherently bad. There is value in setting goals, in aiming higher and planning. But there's also a downside. For many people, success is an ambitious, but also an ambiguous pursuit. People say things like, I want to make more money. I want a better job title or position. Or I want more influence in my life. For many, the goals that they set aren't even truly their own. They're not aligned with their deepest desires and hopes, what is best for them. Instead, their goals are absorbed from others, society, culture, or people they admire. Many of us run ourselves ragged pursuing goals that others have set for us. And two of the greatest mental health challenges in our world today are anxiety and depression. And while there are many legitimate causes for these disorders, they both are also linked to our inability to be present in the moment, rather than thinking about the past or trying to cast a future. Depression, for instance, comes often when we dwell on the past and get caught in a shame spiral over things we cannot change. Joy, peace, fulfillment, all of that comes from grounding ourselves in the present moment. And God is also found in the present moment. And as people of faith, we are called to live different lives than those of the culture around us. Our lives are meant to be lived with an awareness of God's presence, an awareness of our need to rely on God, and continual reliance on God's Spirit to guide our steps forward in the days ahead. As the New Testament says, we are not our own. We are bought with a price. Therefore, our dreams, our plans, and our goals should be offered to God. Instead of being anxious about trying to control tomorrow or depressed about things that we've done in the past, we should surrender our present to God and ask God to lead us, to guide us into what God's will might be. All other goals and dreams should be secondary to what God is calling us to do and who God is calling us to be. In my own life, I have found that when I try to manufacture my own success, when I strain to make my visions or my dream a reality apart from God, I end up failing. Or at very least, I end up wearing myself out. But when I stop and I surrender to God, I ask God to take the reins of my life and to lead me to where I am meant to go, I notice that everything begins to fall into place. That's where true fulfillment is found. Anxiety decreases because I trust God is in my future and is guiding my future. Depression fades because I trust that God's grace covers my past. And in the present, I simply do what I need to do to trust God's will with the outcome. But remembering to do this, remembering to live my life surrendered to God, making plans only insofar as they are aligned with God's will, it's not an easy or even natural thing for us to do. It takes practice to live in the present. It takes practice to live a life surrendered to God. This is one reason why every week when we gather as a church, we join our voices with billions of Christians around the world who have been praying and are praying the words of the Lord's Prayer for thousands of years. It's a beautiful and powerful thing if you think about it. In every corner of the world, in virtually every country, over thousands of years, faithful followers of Jesus have prayed the words, "Our Father who art in heaven." Many Christians throughout history have made a daily practice of praying the Lord's Prayer. This prayer grounds us in a powerful way in the core values and tenets of our faith, reminding us of who God is, who we are, and how we must rely on God for everything. It turns our hearts towards gratitude and helps focus us on the present. This morning, I want us to zero in on one particular line of the Lord's Prayer, a part that James highlights in our text this morning, a line that I believe should be our daily prayer, even a daily mantra that we repeat throughout the week as we go about our lives. And that line from the Lord's Prayer is simple. You know it. May thy will be done. Jesus himself repeats this line in his own life. As he lays in the Garden of Gethsemane praying before his crucifixion, he says in Luke 22:42, "Father, not my will, but thine be done." And in our current text today, James unpacks this simple yet profound prayer, saying, "Now listen to you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that." James's point is that so often we live our lives making plans, pursuing goals, doing our work without any acknowledgement of God and without considering what God's will is for our lives. And as Christians, this should not be so. We should live with a constant awareness of God's presence and a constant desire to be in alignment with God's will. And frankly, life flows a lot better when we surrender to God and seek to do what God desires for us rather than to try to manufacture our own lives. And what James is really getting at is a shift in our perspective that can change how we live our day-to-day lives. The problem in James's scenario is that this hypothetical person plans to travel, make money, be successful, but they've not brought God into the equation at all. Many Christians live as practical atheists, only thinking about God when we have an issue. But faith isn't meant to be a part of our lives. No, it's meant to be the centerpiece of our lives. God isn't an add-on, friends. As Paul writes, in God we live and move and have our being. God is the foundation of our existence, and we can do nothing without God. So in our daily lives, it's important to seek to surrender to God, to consider God, to give God a central place in our day-to-day lives. It's why making a habit of praying, "Not my will, but thine be done," just as Jesus did, can be very helpful for Christians because it reminds us of our responsibility to be ambassadors of God's will, to surrender to God. Or perhaps we can offer a daily prayer, as my friend Marianne Williamson writes, based on this very prayer of Jesus. She begins her day with a simple grounding request to God, praying, "Where would you have me to go? What would you have me to do? What would you have me to say? And to whom?" You see, in that posture of surrender, that posture of service, we will actually move our lives closer to God's will, to what God created us to actually do. We will experience a life that actually brings fulfillment, because the success that we find will have deep meaning, because it's aligned with God's created intention for our lives. When we pray like this and seek to live like this, when we give God control of our lives, truly remarkable things can happen. James' entire point in our reading this morning is not that there's some problem with us making plans or having dreams or setting goals. No, it's that in the midst of all of our goal setting, we need to remind ourselves to bring God into the picture, to surrender our plans to God, trusting that God's plan and God's will is best. As Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and God will establish your path." It's not about not planning for our future, but instead inviting God to have a place in our lives, allowing God to guide us and direct us. And when we get in that place of surrender and we open ourselves up to be free from anxiety or depression about our past or our future, that is where magic happens. As the writer Joseph Campbell once wrote, we must be willing to let go of the life that we planned so as to accept the life that is waiting for us. When we make our daily prayer, "God, may your will be done in my life," we're surrendering to the will of God. We're inviting the Spirit of God to guide us to places that we would have never imagined on our own. There is a life waiting for you that you cannot conceive of yourself. God has things in store for you that you cannot imagine at this moment. There are people you are supposed to meet, words you're supposed to speak, and things you are intended to accomplish. But in order to step into those things, we must have a practice of daily inviting God into our plans, and then opening the eyes of our hearts to see God's working in our lives. We must be willing to respond to the nudges of the Spirit that are in our lives each and every day. So the invitation to us this week is simple. Test this out. Make it our daily prayer, our daily mantra. God, may your will be done in my life. Make your daily prayer, God, where would you have me to go? What would you have me to do? What would you have me to speak? And see what happens. See how your life changes. See what unexpected opportunities arise. See how the presence of God in your life expands. And I have a hunch that once you test this out, you will see the importance of making this invitation to have God be in control of our lives, and it will become an important daily spiritual practice. After all, each one of us is made by God and for God's purposes. So may each of us seek to align ourselves with God's will today and every day. Amen.